Switzerland are through to the World Cup quarterfinals for the first time since 1954, and it took 120 minutes of nervous football and the finest nerve in Vancouver to get them there. Welcome to FairPlay, Football AI Review. This was a round of 16 clash at BC Place that carried enormous weight for both nations. Switzerland had topped their group with 7 points and arrived as the technically superior finishers, but Colombia, Copa America finalists, brimming with South American flair, represented arguably the sternest test Murat Yakin's side had faced in the tournament. One team would reach the last 8, the other would fly home. The narrative heading into this match centered on Colombia's attacking firepower versus Switzerland's tournament-tested defensive resilience. Nestor Lorenzo had 3 unnamed injury concerns in his camp, limiting his rotation options and adding pressure to key players already deep into a grueling tournament schedule. For Switzerland, the clean bill of health was a significant advantage, and Yakin had the luxury of a full squad to call upon in Vancouver. Switzerland lined up in a 4-2-3-1, a shape Murat Yakin has used consistently throughout this tournament to provide double cover in central midfield while allowing the 3-man attacking line to press high and transition quickly. Granit Xhaka and Remo Freuler anchored the engine room, giving the side both the discipline to defend and the distribution to build, with Fabian Rieder given license to drive forward from the right of the 3 behind Briel Embolo. Colombia deployed a 4-4-1-1 under Nestor Lorenzo, a compact and disciplined structure designed to crowd the central channels and invite Switzerland to play in front of them. James Rodriguez sat as the number 10 linking midfield to Luis Suarez up top, while Luis Diaz operated from the left flank with the freedom to cut inside and threaten the Swiss backline. Jefferson Lerma and Gustavo Puerta formed a combative midfield pairing tasked with denying Xhaka the time and space he craves. The key tactical mismatch was in the wide areas. Switzerland's 4-2-3-1 pushed their wingers high, but Colombia's flat 4 in midfield was excellent at tracking those runs and denying space in behind. Dan Ndoye was lively on the Swiss right, but found John Arias a tireless opponent, and the real danger came not from Switzerland's attacking structure, but from Colombia's counter-attacking threat down Diaz's left channel, where he consistently tested Denis Zakaria's positioning. From the first whistle, Colombia were the more aggressive team in transitions, using their compact shape to absorb pressure and then release Diaz in space. Switzerland held the ball patiently, circulating it through Xhaka and Akanji's passing lanes, but struggled to create anything meaningful in those opening exchanges. The atmosphere at BC Place, with 52,497 fans packed inside, was intense from the off. Colombia's XG told the story of the first half most clearly. They were the more dangerous side, with Diaz alone registering 7 shots across the entire 90 minutes and consistently finding pockets of space between the Swiss lines. Gustavo Puerta had a goal-mouth opportunity that Kobel dealt with confidently, and John Lucumi came closest of all when his header rattled the woodwork. 1 of 2 times Colombia struck the frame of the goal across the full 120 minutes. Switzerland's best first-half chance was a speculative Fabian Rieder effort from range that Camilo Vargas had well covered, but the honest truth is that Yakin's side created precious little of genuine quality in open play before the break. Their XG for the entire match was just 0.37, a figure that illustrates just how deep Switzerland were forced to defend and how narrow their attacking margins genuinely were. The booking of Granit Xhaka in the 51st minute was a pivotal moment in the tactical fabric of the game. He mistimed a challenge on Daniel Munoz near the center circle, earning the first yellow of the night, and from that point Yakin's side had to be careful not to invite further cards in midfield. 8 minutes later, Denis Zakaria was also booked for catching Luis Diaz with a foul inside the Colombian half, and suddenly Switzerland were managing 2 of their key central players through the match on disciplinary tightropes. At halftime, Colombia held the psychological edge. They had been more incisive, more direct, and created the clearer openings, yet the scoreboard read 0-0. Switzerland's defensive discipline had held, but the message was clear. They needed to be braver in the second half and put more quality into the final third if they were going to win this inside 90 minutes. Yakin's halftime decision to replace Arden Jashari with Djibril Sow at the break was both a tactical and physical upgrade. Jashari had been energetic but raw in the face of Colombia's physicality in midfield. Sow brought greater defensive positioning and passing range from central midfield, and his introduction gave the Swiss back 4 more protection against the Colombian counter, which had been Colombia's most dangerous weapon in the first period. The double substitution Colombia made in the 66th minute fundamentally altered the character of the game. Nestor Lorenzo withdrew both James Rodriguez and John Arias, sending on Juan Fernando Quintero and Jaminton Campas. The change brought more directness and energy to the Colombian attacking line, with Campas immediately causing problems on the right and Quintero providing creative unpredictability in the half spaces. This was Lorenzo responding to the fact that his team's prettier possession football had not been converting chances into goals. Switzerland made a further adjustment at 71 minutes, replacing Ricardo Rodriguez with Miro Muheim at left back, a fresher pair of legs to deal with the increasing threat from Colombia's revamped attacking unit. Then, in the 87th minute, Yakin moved boldly again, withdrawing both Breel Embolo and Dennis Zakaria to bring on Cedric Itten and Sylvain Widmer. These were changes designed for solidity and a fresh set-piece threat, with Itten's physical presence useful in both boxes. 3 minutes into added time, Dan Ndoye was replaced by Ruben Vargas, a decision that would prove spectacularly prescient before the evening was done. The 82nd minute double switch for Colombia, Cucho Hernandez on for Luis Suarez and Richard Rios, replacing Jefferson Lerma, injected pace and pressing intensity just as both sides entered the critical phase of the second half. Suarez had worked hard without reward, his movement intelligent but ultimately frustrated by the disciplined Swiss defensive block. Hernandez offered a completely different threat, explosive, direct, and willing to run in behind. With extra time looming in the final moments of normal time, Jaminton Campas struck the Colombian woodwork, their second time hitting the frame of the goal in the match. It was an agonizing near miss that summed up Colombia's evening, dominant in territory, dangerous in moments, and yet unable to find the finish when it mattered most. That woodwork strike, so close to ending it in 90, was among the most significant non-events of the entire World Cup so far. Extra time produced 30 tense, attritional minutes in which neither side was willing to overcommit. Switzerland sat deeper and trusted their defensive structure, conceding territory but protecting the central areas. Colombia continued to probe through Quintero and Campas, who had both been on the pitch long enough to tire. Switzerland's Zeki Amdouni came on for Fabian Rieder in the 103rd minute. Rieder had been their most active attacking player all evening, and Amdouni's directness in those closing extra-time moments gave the Swiss a focal point they had been missing. In the 119th minute, an injured John Lukumi was replaced by Yerry Mina, the veteran centre-back getting his first minutes of the tournament under the most pressurized possible circumstances. Neither team created a clear-cut chance across the additional 30 minutes, and the matter would ultimately go to penalties. Colombia went first in the shootout, and Juan Fernando Quintero opened with a composed, measured spot kick that gave Kobel no chance. Granit Xhaka, captain and leader, stepped up for Switzerland and drove his penalty into the corner to level it immediately at 1 apiece. Then came the first dramatic swing of the shootout. Davinson Sanchez stepped up for Colombia and Kobel dived to his right, saving the centre-back's penalty to give Switzerland the advantage. Zeki Amdouni had the chance to put Switzerland 2-1 ahead, and he delivered, a controlled, well-placed finish that settled any immediate nerves. But Jaminton Campas responded for Colombia, smashing his penalty powerfully to make it 2 apiece. Then Manuel Akanji, Switzerland's defensive rock throughout the tournament, ran up and ballooned his attempt over the crossbar, a shocking miss from one of the most experienced players on the pitch, handing Colombia a lifeline. Cucho Hernandez had the opportunity to put Colombia ahead for the first time in the shootout, but Gregor Kobel produced an extraordinary save, diving to his right to repel the effort and keep the scores level at 2-2. It was the pivotal moment of the entire shootout. Cedric Itten, who had come on just minutes before the end of normal time, stepped up with ice in his veins and scored to give Switzerland a 3-2 lead they would not relinquish. Luis Diaz, 7 shots during the match, relentless all evening, converted emphatically to bring it to 3-3 and ensure the tension would go to a 5th and final kick from each side. Ruben Vargas, another late substitute, walked up to the spot at BC Place with the entire stadium holding its breath and stroked a perfect penalty into the bottom corner to seal a 4-3 Swiss victory. The greatest night in Swiss football in over 70 years had been settled by a man who had been on the pitch for barely 20 minutes. On the ball, Switzerland controlled 53% of possession and completed 547 accurate passes, but possession in this match was a comfortable illusion rather than a reflection of genuine dominance. Colombia were more direct, more vertical, and far more dangerous in open play, despite touching the ball less frequently. Switzerland's passing accuracy of 87% was excellent, but much of that passing was in safe, low-risk areas designed to slow the game down rather than unlock Colombia's defensive block. Colombia's attacking numbers were simply superior to Switzerland's throughout the 120 minutes. Colombia registered 15 shots in total to Switzerland's 7, and 9 of those Colombian attempts came from inside the box compared to just 4 for the Swiss. The XG figures told the same story. Switzerland managed just 0.37 across the entire match, while Colombia accumulated 0.96, nearly 3 times as much. 2 shots striking the woodwork for Colombia underline just how close they came to winning this inside 90 minutes without ever finding the back of the net. Defensively, Switzerland were magnificent when it mattered most. Gregor Kobel made 3 saves in normal time, and then produced the save of the night in the shootout to deny Hernandez. Manuel Akanji and Nico Elvedi dealt with Colombia's aerial threat, particularly the set pieces Colombia generated from their 7 corners, without serious alarm. The Swiss backline gave away virtually nothing in central areas, and when Colombia did find Diaz in space, wide left, the cover tracking from Zakaria and then Muheim was generally good enough to force him into low-quality efforts. Switzerland's standout performer was Fabian Rieder. He registered 3 shots across the match and drove forward relentlessly, completing over 100 minutes before being replaced by Amdouni. His energy on the right side of the Swiss 3 gave the team their primary outlet, and he was the one Swiss midfielder genuinely willing to accept the ball in tight spaces and carry it toward goal. He was eventually outrun by the match, but his contribution over 103 minutes was the central attacking thread for Jakin's side. On Colombia's side, Luis Diaz was simply magnificent, despite finishing on the losing side. 7 shots, 2 on target, 2 blocked, and a constant menace down the Swiss left. He was the most dangerous attacker on the field in normal time and extra time by a significant margin. His conversion in the shootout showed his composure, and the fact that Switzerland could not find a solution to his movement across 120 minutes is testament to how brilliant he was. Diaz goes home with enormous credit from a tournament in which Colombia were so close to reaching the quarterfinals. The player who disappointed most was James Rodriguez. He managed just 33 passes across 66 minutes, a low total for a player expected to orchestrate Colombia's attacking play, and Lerma's pairing with Puerta meant the creative load fell on Rodriguez to unlock Switzerland, a task he never quite managed. His withdrawal at 66 minutes was a pragmatic decision by Lorenzo, but it also represented an acknowledgement that Colombia's most technically gifted midfielder had been unable to find the keys to open a very organized Swiss defense. Murat Yakin's management of this match deserves considerable credit. His willingness to use the full substitution quota strategically, managing cards, freshening legs, and then having both Itten and Vargas available to step up and score in the shootout, showed excellent tournament preparation. Lorenzo's double change at 66 minutes was bold and initially energizing, but his team's inability to convert their XG advantage across 120 minutes and then losing the shootout means this exit will sting deeply despite the positive football Colombia played for large portions. Switzerland and Colombia had only one prior head-to-head result in the API data for this tournament era, but tonight's match adds a significant chapter to their limited history. The narrative of this contest will be remembered not as Switzerland triumphing over Colombia, but as the Swiss defense absorbing enormous pressure and then executing in the ice bath of a penalty shootout. For Colombia, the psychological blow of losing a shootout after controlling so much of the play will linger into their rebuilding cycle under Lorenzo. Switzerland arrived at this match in excellent recent form, 5 wins from their last 5, including a convincing 2-0 victory over Algeria and a 4-1 hammering of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the group stage. Their confidence heading into the knockout round was justifiably high, and their defensive structure has been consistent throughout. The squad's fitness levels appeared excellent over 120 demanding minutes in Vancouver. Colombia came into this fixture with momentum, a win over Ghana, draws against Portugal, and victories in South American friendlies, but the defeat by the shootout reveals a team that might have peaked just before the tournament's decisive moments. 3 unnamed injury absences in the camp limited Lorenzo's flexibility, and Lukumi's in-game injury in the 119th minute compounded an already stretched defensive situation heading into extra time. Switzerland now advanced to face Argentina in the quarterfinals, a staggering test against the world champions and the tournament's leading scorer, Lionel Messi, with 8 goals. For Colombia, the tournament is over, eliminated at the last 16 stage despite generating more dangerous attacking play than their opponents in Vancouver. The promise is there for Lorenzo's side. The execution, ultimately, was not. Switzerland will need everything they have shown across this tournament and more when they line up against Argentina. Messi and company will test their defensive structure in ways Colombia could not, and the XG Switzerland produced against Lorenzo's side, 0.37, will not be enough to beat a side of Argentina's quality, but the Swiss have proven they can absorb pressure, execute at the shootout, and find heroes from the bench. Switzerland are through to the World Cup quarterfinals for the first time in 72 years, powered not by dominant football, but by collective defensive discipline, extraordinary goalkeeping from Kobel, and ice-cold nerve from a group of substitutes who had barely touched the pitch before destiny called them to the spot. This was not beautiful football. Colombia were the better side across most of the 120 minutes. But it was winning football, and in a World Cup knockout round, that is the only currency that matters. Argentina await in the quarterfinals, and the world champions will present a challenge of an entirely different magnitude to anything Switzerland have faced in this tournament. Stay with us here on FairPlay for every angle of what promises to be a historic quarterfinal confrontation. That's the FairPlay verdict on this one. If you want more analysis like this, follow us. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at FairPlayAI, and follow Anthony personally on X at Anthony Fairplay. See you next match.